Hello and Assalamu alaikum everyone. Hope you all are doing well. I am with you MD Shajadur Ahmed and I am welcoming you all to the problem development in Python using control statement. So far in the first part we have seen the common control statement available in Python, actually available in all programming language like if else, for, while, and we have already seen how to implement those control statement in Python programming. In this tutorial, we are actually going to focus how to conceptualize the problem, how to develop the problem statement into an algorithm or into a pseudocode, and then finally how to solve the pseudocode Python programming. So let us begin. So sequence control repetition. So first of all, the most challenging part of solving a problem is developing an algorithm for the solution. As we all know, that first of all we have to conceptualize the problem as we call as a algorithm. Once a correct algorithm has been specified, creating a working Python programming is typically straightforward. So we are done with algorithm and then it is very easier to implement in any other language as well. This section and the next going on to represent problem solving and problem development by creating a script that solve two class averaging problems. So we are going to solve a class averaging problem. And first of all, how to conceptualize this problem, it is our first concern. So requirement statement. A requirement statement describes what a program is supposed to do, but not how the program should do it. So it is just going to specify how to solve the problem, but not what the way to solve the problem. So consider the following simple requirement statements, like a class of 10 students took a quiz. Their grades, integer in range from 0 to 100, are suppose these followings. At the grade of 10 students, determine the class average on the quiz. So now our task is to determine the average of the quiz of 10 students. So let us first of all conceptualize this problem. So the algorithm of solving the problem must keep a running total of grades. That means it will add all the grades all together one by one, calculate the average, the total of the grades divided by the number of grades. So when the grade is ready, the total grade, then we need to divide the total grade by the number of students, and then we need to display the problem. So let us see the pseudocode. So pseudocode must be first of all set the total is a variable. So first of all we need to set it as 0 and then set grade count to 0. That means how many grades we are going to count is going to be set inside a counter, which is going to specify as grade counter. It is also need to be initialized as 0. Set grade to list of the 10 grades. So we have to prepare a list of 10 grades. We have already seen how list works. So inside the list, inside the braces, we will going to put all the grades of the 10 students. Then for each grades in the grade list, add the grade to the total and then add on to the grade counter. So suppose first of all total equal to 0 and then first grade suppose 97. So total equal to 97 plus 0. So total become 97 and then suppose next one is 81. So it will again add the 81 into the total and so on, and whenever it going to add a new marks of a student, then it will also going to increase the counter. So first time when we add 97, the counter become 1, and when we are going to add 81, then the counter become 2, and so on. Set the class average to the total divided by the number of grades. So then the class average will be into the total and then divided by the number of grades. Display the class average. Then we have to just display the class average. So now we have done with developing the algorithm or the pseudocode. So now it is very easy to implement it in a Python code. So let us see that. So as we can see, we are in Colab now, and as we have developed the algorithm, according to the algorithm we have already written the Python code. So first of all we have initialized the total and set it as 0, and then set it the grade counter as 0, and then prepared a list of grades all the 10 students grades are here in the list inside the square braces, and then after we have used the for statement, and after using the for statement we are actually counting the grades over and over again. That means we are actually adding all the grades into the total. First of all, it will add 98 with 0, and then the counter become 1, and then 76 with 98, then the counter become 2, and so on. Then the final grades of all 10 students will be in total variable, and also the count, that means there is 10 students, so that the grade count should be 10. Count value is in grade count variable. So now we just need to, as we know that to prepare variable we have to divide the total into the number of students. So that's what we have done. We have assigned another variable average, and then in average we divided total by the number of grades, that is grade count. So that now we are actually just giving the output of average as we have required to. So let's run the program. So after running the program, you can see the average is already produced in the output display, and it is 1881.7. So that's how actually we are going to solve a problem statement in Python. So let's go back to the slide. Okay, so in this section we are going to discuss about formatted strings. What is formatted string? You can see from the following example, use the simple F string, short form of formatted string, to format this script result by inserting the value of average into a string like F, then quotation, class average is, then curly braces, and then the variable. So you can see we can also actually add the variable inside a string, and for that we just need to use the F string. So after using F and then starting the code, we can just put down the string message, and then wherever we want to put the variable value, we just need to put it inside the curly braces. So that's what actually called formatted string, and in formatted string we can actually contain values, variables, other expressions such as calculation and function and so on. So we have already practiced it in our previous example, if you notice that. So let's move on. Sentinel control repetition. So what is sentinel control repetition? It is actually a single value or dummy value. So let's generalize the class average problem. Consider the following requirement statement. Develop a class averaging problem that processes an arbitrary number of grades each time the program executes. So one way to solve the problem is to use a special value called sentinel value, also called single value or dummy value or flag value, to indicate end of the entry. The user enter grades on at a time until all the grades have been entered. So the user then enter the sentinel value to indicate that there are no longer any grades. So it is actually a special character or a special value that actually used to indicate the end of the input. So we will see an example, then it will be clear to us. So sentinel control repetition is often called indefinite repetition because the number of repetition is not known before the loop begins executing. So actually it's also sentinel control repetition is also called finite repetition because it is actually not known to the programmer how many times the loop going to be repeated. It depends on the user and depend on the sentinel value. So let us now see an example of sentinel control repetition. Okay, so now here we are in sentinel control repetition. So we have used two variables, one is total and another is grade count, to count how many grades has been inputted by the user, and then we have produced a output message to the user like enter grades, and inside the message we have also mentioned that -1 to exit. So if the user think that all the grades they want to enter is actually completed or actually finished, then they need to press -1 to exit. So this is actually what called the sentinel control value. So it depending on the sentinel control value, we will now lay out our program. So that's why first of all in while we are actually saying that if the grade is not equal to -1, that means it is indicating that for the first time user has been not entered any -1, they have entered any other values, then total equal to total plus grade, then we are actually calculating all the grades into the total variable, and then we are actually also counting how many grade has been entered by the user, and after that we are also again giving the same message to the user, because a user can input more than one grade. So depending on this message they will enter another grade, and then that grade also will be compared to -1. If it is not -1, then it will be calculated to the total, and also the grade count will be increased, it will become 2, and so on. Then when the user think that all the value they are actually intended to give input as a grade is finished, then they will press -1 depending on the message, and when they press -1 it become equal to, and then it go outside the loop and came here. After here it compare with grade equal to -1, and in this time it become yes, and if it is yes, then average equal to total divided by grade count, as we have done in our previous case, and then we are actually just giving the output of the average. So that's what actually Sentinel control work for. Okay, so let's run the program. So if we run the program, it is actually asking value from the user. You can see enter grade or press -1 for exit. Suppose user inputted 65, and then same message will be shown to the user. Now this time user will input 67, and again the same message. Now user on to exit, so they press -1. So when they press -1, then the average will be calculated. So 65 plus 75 divided by 2 is 70. So that's how it works. So let's go back to the slide. Okay, so now we are going to discuss about nested control statement. So we all know what is nested loop. We know that it is actually loop inside another loop. So it also functional in Python programming as well. So let's work through another complete program. Once again, we plan the algorithm using pseudocode, and we develop the corresponding Python script. So there will be another requirement statement. So let's read down it all together. A college offers a course that prepares students for the IELTS exam, and then last year several of the students who completed this course took the IELTS exam. The college wants to know how well their student did on the exam. So you have been asked to write a code or a program to summarize the result. You have been given a list of 10 students. So there are 10 students. We have to process 10 students. Next to each name is written a 1 if the student is passed and in the exam, and a 2 if the student fails. So if there are 10 element or 10 student list, so we need to press 1 or put 1 if the student passes, or if the student fails, then we need to put 2. Okay. So after reading the requirement statement carefully, we make the following observation about the problem. So what are the observation? The problem must process 10 test results. So it must be, the loop must be repeated 10 times. We'll use the statement and the range function to control the repetition. So we'll use range function. Each test a result is a number, either a 1 or 0. So each time the program read a test result, the program must determine if the number is 1 or 2. We test for a 1 in our algorithm. If the number is not 1, then assume that it is 2. So if it is not 1, then pretty surely it is going to be 2. We'll use 2 counter. On counter is the number of students who passes the exam, and on to count the number of students who fail. So there will be 2 counter to count number of 1s and number of 2s. After the script processes all the result, it must decide if more than 8 students passes the exam, so that so that the instructor can get bonus. So there is a condition given that if more than 8 students pass the exam, then the instructor will going to get some bonus. But If it is not, then there will be nothing happens, or there will be some other consequences as well. So let us implement this code also. So here we are in Colab. So first of all, as we discussed, that we need to put two counters. So to use as a counter, we have used two variable as a passes and failures, and put it as 0, and then we start a for loop, and inside the for loop we put 5, because to reduce the length of this code and to reduce the length of the input, we are actually keeping it to 5 rather than 10. And also here is another change: if there are more than or equal to 3 passes, then the instructor going to get bonus, or otherwise there will be nothing. So let's move forward. So there are 5 in the range, and then we are actually taking an input, and in the message, display message, we are showing that enter result 1 for pass and 2 for fail, and depending on the message, user will input something including 1 and 2. If it is, we are comparing the result is equal to 1 or not. If it is 1, then we will say passes equal to passes pass 1 as a counter, using passes as a counter. If it is not 1, then it must be 2. So we are saying that failure equal to failure plus 1. So that's how the counter works, and it will be repeated 5 times. When it is repetition is done, then it will print the number of passes and the number of fails, and also it will compare that if the passes is greater than or equal to 3 or not. If it is greater than or equal to 3, then another message will be shown, like give bonus to the instructor, or if it is less than 3, then the message should be nothing. So here we are actually dealing with nested loop. So you can see there are a for loop, and inside the for loop there are if loop 2 times. So that's what actually called nested loop inside another loop. So let's run the program. So you can see it's asking some value. So for the first time, let's say we are entering 3 1. So that means 3 passes and 2 failures. So let's see the result. You can see the passes is 3 and fail is 2. So because passes is greater than or equal to 3, that's why the instructor going to get a bonus. Let's work once again, run the code. So let's put failure 3 times on. You can see pass is 2 and fail is 3, and the message is nothing. So that's how nested loop works in Python. So it is very easier to use nested loop in Python as well. So let's go back to the slide. So that's all from this tutorial. If you have any queries, any questions, we all know there are some forum of Python. We can frequently ask question and get frequent feedback from there. And additional, you can also ask your question below the comment section, so that I can give your feedback. So that's all from this tutorial. Hope to see you in next tutorial as well. Till then, everyone, stay safe, stay home. Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.